Captain Midnight.
This video will feature spoilers. Just a few videos ago, I reviewed the first 2 episodes of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man on Disney+, talking about what I liked, what I was curious about, and, in a slightly negative review, my major hangups with those episodes and what they were laying out. I also asked you all if you'd like to see me review the rest of the season. But honestly, if the rest of the season had played out like those first 2 episodes and it didn't really sway me, I probably would have left well enough alone. Having finished season 1 though, I agree with a lot of you in the comments saying that I can't let that be my final word on the show. Because I'm happy to say overall, I really enjoyed this season of TV, and I had to get back in here and talk about why. Before I do though, thanks again to everyone who subscribed last week. We're making our way to 720k subscribers, so if you find yourself watching and haven't yet, maybe hit that button and turn on the bell. Because I ended things on a bit of a downer note in my last review, how about I start with some very high praise here. I really like how this show handled the Osborns, especially Norman. Colman Domingo is mostly known for his live action work, and that doesn't always equal a great voice actor. But thankfully, that is just not the case here. I think he's a top tier Norman, which given how he's almost a co-lead, far more than any other Spidey show, that was an absolute must. What he brings to the character is more than just gravitas. It's a charm and an arrogance that elevates Norman beyond the one-dimensional CEO asshole that he could have been in worse hands. Because of the nature of this story, Norman spends far more time with Peter through the highs and lows of the Spider-Man experience. And you buy every step of the way why Peter wants to believe the very best in this guy. And despite Nico's warnings, wants to see him as something of a father figure now that Ben is gone. I love that this version of Norman is multifaceted. He can have these introspective conversations with Peter where, yeah, sometimes the advice isn't great, but it does seem like he genuinely cares about the kid. But then there's scenes like the one in the prison talking to Otto Octavius. This sneering, mean-spirited conversation where he clearly enjoys kicking Otto while he's down, remaining calm and composed, but going so far out of his way to be spiteful that it speaks volumes to what really drives this guy. One of the defining scenes of the season sees Norman spelling his philosophy out to Peter. With great power comes great respect. I think it's worth highlighting how much that shows up in Norman's actions. He didn't need to visit Otto in person. In fact, it's very easy to say that this conversation was a really stupid thing for him to do, giving the genius doctor every reason to want to break out and target him more than ever. But he does it anyway, because Otto seems to be the only person who denies Norman the one thing he values, but can't manage to buy: respect, seeing Osborn purely as a stuffed suit. Despite crushing Otto with the power of the US government and the Avengers, destroying his small-time arms operation, Norman can't manage to get an ounce of respect from the man. The fact that there are admirable aspects to Norman that can coexist comfortably next to this and feel of a piece is something that a lot of prestige TV shows can't manage to pull off well, let alone an animated show on Disney+. I was impressed and can firmly say that I think Norman Osborn was the high point of the season for me. Otto is great too, by the way. They didn't reinvent the wheel with Doc Ock. Like, this is the classic arrogant science genius characterization we've seen in many comics, and pretty far removed from the more sympathetic version in Spider-Man 2 or the PS4 game. And I'm perfectly happy with that, because this is a great take on it. You could tell the writers had a great time writing Ock here. I loved his introduction, that transition from sleazy salesman to overconfident egomaniac that's so disgusted that he has to talk to these low-life criminals that he demands his warehouse disinfected afterwards. That was already good stuff. Then how it's mirrored in the power dynamics in that scene with Osborn, where Otto is stuck just picking up the phone, while this time it's Norman using a wipe to deign to speak with him. These two men are far more alike than they'd ever want to admit, even if one is a much more off-putting nerd and the other appears to have it all put together. Both are visions of what Peter could be if he follows Norman's advice to seek respect through power above all. The rest of the cast, I don't think always hits these heights, but I grew to appreciate them too. Lonnie Lincoln gets a very fleshed out subplot that sees him going from star QB and solid student, to reluctant gang member trying to bail out his little brother from trouble, to finally having similar powers to comic Tombstone, and most importantly, embracing his role as one of the leaders of the gang that he's now completely bought into. Now, none of this was super shocking or anything, and I don't think anyone is going to mistake the gang war storyline in a Spider-Man cartoon for like The Wire, but it was written with a good sense of pacing and a firm handle on the character's development every step of the way. Lonnie doesn't flip a switch and become a villain. I really appreciated that as someone who has seen that play out time and time again on like a dozen CW superhero shows. Actually, far from it. He may be going down a dark road at the end of the season, but it's Lonnie who brings Peter back from the brink of going too far when wailing on Scorpion. And it was all woven into these mostly episodic stories pretty seamlessly.
Looking for me?
Then there's the teen drama aspect of the show. Lonnie and Pearl breaking up, Peter wanting to be a friend to them but still having a crush on Pearl while also being her lab partner, Harry as the lonely rich kid with a huge social media following but no real friends until he bonds with Peter and Nico harboring hurt feelings that Peter told Harry his secret but not her, while having a superpower secret of her own. If all of that makes you groan, I get it. Somewhere out there there's a more adult-focused Spider-Man show that isn't filled with teen drama, and I'd like to check out that version too, but this just isn't that. And for what it is, I think it's honestly not bad. For better or worse, I was forged in the fire of 90s and 2000s teen TV. I have seen season 3 episodes of The OC that you people wouldn't believe, and I just have a high tolerance for this kind of thing, but I honestly do think it's pretty painless and enjoyable here. I wasn't asking for a whole subplot about Harry and Nico hanging out together, but when I got it, you know what? It worked. It didn't make them instant best friends overnight. It didn't lead to any huge Spider-Man related revelations, beyond a hint at Nico's powers. It was just a nice little character-focused subplot that believably brought the two of them closer together, and it gave the show more avenues of characterization to explore down the line. Now, in my last video on the show, I really took this Peter to task in what I felt like was a one-dimensional portrayal in those 2 episodes. Like many more contemporary takes on Peter, I thought they overloaded him with far too much adorkable humor and didn't let any of his flaws come through. Something I just feel is essential for this character. So after a season in the books, has that changed? Yes and no. Would I call this show's Peter one of my favorite on-screen interpretations? No, I would not. He's pretty mild and still feels too much like a Tom Holland tribute band. I just don't think he holds a candle to the Peter of like Spectacular Spider-Man or the 90s series. But do I like what the show is doing with him more now? Absolutely. It helps that I think he's actually a very competent Spider-Man. The bad jokes, the tough choices, the battles that go south for him when things get wildly out of hand, it's all there and handled well. I think the high point with Spidey are his battles with Scorpion, especially the one in the gang's hideout that sees him getting beat to a pulp and stabbed by Scorpion's tail, which sends him to the hospital and, in classic Parker fashion, into a spiral over whether he can really do this job at all. I know a lot of people have issues with the animation, but I thought that fight was really effective, and heightened by some great sound design that does not pull any punches. When he fights Scorpion again and is sent into a rage trying to follow Norman's advice to stop pulling his punches, Peter gets a little darker. I do like how they played this. He's not Black Suit Spider-Man, like he's not saying anything over the top and crazy to Scorpion. There's no shocker scream here. He just goes silent and looks ready to kill him. Most importantly, I thought this did a really good job of tapping into this central conceit that sets this show apart from other Spider-Man shows. The idea that here, he's mentored by Norman Osborn. I understand that there will be mixed feelings on this, and especially to the changes to Peter's original spider bite. Honestly, I found the spider switch up a little unnecessary, and I'm not a huge fan of it. But the Norman mentor angle wasn't just a gimmick. It didn't feel like something they included to salvage a show that was originally an MCU Peter origin story, which is what I had kind of been afraid of. By the end, I think they had earned it, and managed to bring something new to the table that justified what could have been a very basic what-if premise. I think that mounting rift between the two of them also made Peter himself better, elevating him out of the one-note issues I had with the early episodes. Like Tony, Norman is a benevolent billionaire providing Peter with cool new suits. But here, they really linger on the potential issues with this, with Osborn trying at every turn to co-opt the Spider-Man identity. What he stands for, what his powers are, what he looks like, all of it. Norman's focus group tested costumes make things worse for Peter again and again. And yes, it also provides some fun callbacks to the comics, like his Hornet costume from 90s Sensational Spider-Man. And I like that here, they're all used to make a point. Norman has the money. He basically bought the concept of Spider-Man, but he doesn't appreciate it and he doesn't understand why it works. It is pretty funny this show is on Disney+. Anyway, I like how even when Peter does manage to get Spider-Man as an idea back, it's still in the form of a costume that he and Harry agree is too sterile and corporate. This show waits until very late in the game to give Spidey his classic look, but that's done very purposefully, and I don't feel like it's dragged out for no reason. One last note on that. While I like the Spider-Verse movies, overall I think the whole concept has been a really big drag on the comics, and I'm very tired of it. So I think it's fitting here that the plan to bring more spider people into this world is done very cynically by Norman, stealing Peter's DNA without his knowledge to create more of them. If they have to introduce more spider people, at least this sets up a fun twist on the concept.
I wonder if this thing will work for me.
And like I said, I know some people hate the animation in this show. I'm not going to linger on this too much because I addressed it in my last one. But yeah, it's either something you're going to be able to get on board with or not. It's not my favorite, but it's also nowhere near where I'd write off the whole show because of it. If that's you, fair enough. I'm impressed you made it this far into the video. Now, the changes to the origin, tying it into Doctor Strange and time travel, I do struggle with a bit more. It helps that that story is tied into the finale that I mostly liked, with the Doctor Strange-Spidey relationship I thought was really strong. By the way, I think the show handles other Marvel heroes really well so far. Charlie Cox Daredevil is back here and is more involved than just the one-off guest appearance I had kind of assumed at first. Iron Man is barely in it, but I enjoyed his throwback 60s suit, and more importantly, how well the show was able to weave the MCU Civil War and Sokovia Accords into Norman's motivations. It managed to have all these elements while keeping Peter very much a solo act. But yeah, the spider bite change is not my favorite aspect of the show. Like, I will say Uncle Ben's death and presence is very much touched on and important here, even if the character isn't as tied into Peter's origin as he normally is. Really, I think every Spider-Man fan has a version of the character in their head, even if it's like some foggy amalgamation, that they consider to be something of the true take on the character. For me, it's probably a combination of the comics from the early days, the mid-80s or so, like before I was born, a lot of the Raimi movies, and a strong hint of the 90s show. Somewhere distilled in all of that is a version of Spider-Man that feels like the definitive Peter Parker to me. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man matches that at points and diverges from it at others. I wouldn't put this on a pedestal as like the last word on the character by any means. But I also don't want to be too rigid about these things, to shut out new interpretations or ideas that can bring something worthwhile and interesting to the table. Season 1 of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man does that, and does it successfully. In my time on this channel, I've watched some very half-hearted animated series about the webhead, and I'm happy to say that this just isn't one of them. It's a well-crafted show that blends serialized and episodic storytelling effectively. A lot of thought was clearly put into the characterization of the cast, both where they differ from older versions and where they converge, and the show takes its what-if style premise seriously enough to find something new to say about Peter Parker and Norman Osborn. And though some of the setup for Season 2 does seem a little shaky to me, like really, we're bringing Peter's dad into this? Friendly Neighborhood has earned a measure of trust. I would love a longer episode order next time around because I'm excited to see where they go with this. At the end of the day, I just really enjoyed this one. Well, that's Season 1 of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, a show I was happy to return to after covering the first couple episodes. You know what else I should probably touch on again? Lindsay Ellis's video trying to make sense of the X-Men Cinematic Universe timeline. This is Ellis at her best, taking apart the absurd timeline of the Fox X-Men universe bit by bit and trying to make sense of it all. And as someone who covered Dark Phoenix as it came out, I really appreciated their discussion of that movie, especially of Jennifer Lawrence's very cheap-looking Mystique makeup. You can only find it on Nebula. And now that I mention it, Nebula is also where you can watch all of my videos completely ad-free, along with some originals of my own, which I plan on adding to soon. I've been gathering some thoughts on the new Buffy reboot, and in March I'm going to release an unscripted, podcast-style filibuster on that because frankly, I have a lot to say. That's definitely not all, of course. It's also the home of videos from Nando V Movies, Hello Future Me, and Patrick H. Willems, who has a new short film coming to Nebula too, Dinner Plan, about serious allergies and a dinner party going completely off the rails. They're all there alongside so many others, encompassing so many genres of video. So don't miss it. Get 40% off now, meaning a Nebula membership will only be $36 a year or $3 a month at go.nebula.tv/Captain Midnight right now.
Here's a special tip for the fellas and girls who have not already joined Captain Midnight's new 1940 Flight Patrol. You'd better hurry up and join at once because there's a big adventure ahead. The thing to do now is to get started because we're going to have not only barrels of fun, but loads of free gifts and prizes too.